Hello, everyone. Good to see you. I'm going to share this link to Twitter really fast. And let's see here. Give it a second. Get some, see if a few people join. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. It's okay. How are you all doing on this Wednesday evening? You doing okay? Or how are you doing when you're watching this? You doing all right? I hope you're doing all right. I'm freaking freezing right now. It's freaking frigid. It's effing freezing. Live recap of my appearance for the school board, the events that preceded it. I'll say going live to recap. I just realized that the name of this video, because I just like started a lot. so stupid. The name of the video is just Truman's Meeting. It's pretty great. I wonder if I can rename it. I can. Okay, here we go. Recap of school board appearance plus lesson on institutional capture. That's what we're talking about, boys and girls. Enter. Save it. Will that save it? Did that save it? Aha. I don't know if that'll save it in YouTube. Okay. So for the kids at home, I didn't wear this freaking old corduroy jacket that I had on during that meeting, but I'm just really cold right now. Anyway, so for those who missed it, I went on Deb Philman's The Reason We Learn live stream or channel that we did a live stream on Sunday, I think. Monday? It was Sunday night. To talk about just a tragedy that took place a little over a week ago. A former student took his life. Really good kid. And this is a kid who was in the behavior support program that I worked at during its like peak year of insanity, when myself and other employees filed complaints about the conditions of that behavior support program, how like toxic and untenable it was, and how damaging it was to students and staff, but students are the ones who matter. And those complaints were ignored. The district failed to investigate them. And so I talked about that on Deb's channel. I'll include a link to that conversation. It was about 3 hours long. For those of you who missed it, whenever I go back and edit this video, to including editing the dumbass default name that I put in there, is my bad. On that, I've read an open letter that I'd written that was pretty redacted, but it gave the relevant details to the situation. And I wrote that, it's up on Medium. It's just called an open letter to the citizens of Albany County. But then I edited that letter to be more detailed. I changed it up. I toned some of the language down a little bit. But I also included like names and district policies that were violated and so on and so forth. And I sent an individualized copy of that to every member of the school board on Monday night. So today's Wednesday. This was 2 nights ago. Just begging them to take it seriously, to go back and investigate that, to investigate why the district didn't investigate that situation. And then I found that whenever they didn't renew my contract in August, which is when my contract ended, they didn't uh, get rid of my work email. I still had my work email. So there is an option in your work email to email all staff. So Monday night, after emailing the school board, I drafted a kind of an introduction to the letter that I sent to the school board. And then I attached the letter that I sent to the school board after that. And then I sent that to every single staff member in the district, which was, I don't know, it's over 1,000 people. It says this email is going out to over 1,000 recipients. I think it's like 1,400 or 1,600 people that work in my school district. That was pretty stressful to do that. I'm actually I wonder if I can tab over and read. I might read that to you, just that introduction, because I blind CC'd myself on it. I won't do that. I'll include copies of it. But I emailed everyone, and that it took me a while to think about whether or not I should do that. But I landed on doing that because I was desperate to get people to see it, to pay attention to what this kid went through. And, I made it explicitly clear. In fact, the version of the letter I sent to the school board, I actually strengthened my language, saying that I did not believe that this one completely insane teacher was responsible for this kid's death, because I don't think that she is responsible. But I do think that his time in that room under those insane circumstances definitely played a role in his trust of adults, trust in the system, in his faith in himself, and his view of himself and his self-worth. And, probably that all culminates into your will to live, and is a factor there. And the point I made in the conversation with Deb is, it doesn't matter if I think that she's responsible or not. And again, I don't think she is. We shouldn't have to even ask the question, man, do we think that the emotional abuse in that year of hell he experienced at the middle school, a little over a year before he killed himself, do you think that had anything to do with it? Whenever he was writing about how he feels worthless and nothing matters, a little over a year ago, because of what this teacher is putting him through, do you think that might have influenced his will to live? Like, my point is that we shouldn't even have to ask that question, because that shouldn't happen. Anyway, so as an aside, also, none of this is scripted. I'm just kind of breaking stuff down for you, and then I'm going to add a little micro lesson at the end. As an aside, it was really, really fucking stressful to send that email out to that many people. I live in a relatively small community. I just realized I look like a shitty community college teacher right now. Oh my God. That's funny. Anyway, like I look like I teach community college drama or something like that. I'm gonna preempt any jokes in the comments. Anyway, it was super stressful. I live in a small community, and I kept going. I just stared at it before. I kept going back through the email that I was sending out, and I basically said, I gave a little preamble in the one that I sent out to all staff members, where the subject was, it's one thing to be sad, it's another thing to do something about it. And I basically said, look, there's two types of response to incidents like this. First, we kind of blame ourselves and what did we do, or what could we have done different? And then, out of compassion, the people around us say, oh, there's nothing to be done, it's just a tragedy, and there's not a lot of learning that takes place. Or we can say that no matter where it takes us, and feelings be damned, we can get to work figuring out how this happened and how to keep it from happening in the future. And that was my encouragement to the staff members, was to do that. And I said, I know you're probably going to hate me for what I have to say. And I said that I, in a lot of ways, blame myself at least in part, for not fighting hard enough for that kid whenever he was in that environment with that teacher. And so I basically said, look, I understand, I'm grieving too. And maybe maybe me sending this letter is part of that grieving process. I don't know, but something has to be done so that this doesn't happen again. I stared at that. I went back and edit this or edit that, change this word around for hours. And I kept going. I went through this process that I learned whenever I was at seminary called fruit to root, which is just going through the fruit of what am I thinking? It's basically CBD or CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's basically a spiritual version of that. But I just kept going through of why do I feel this way? Why do I feel this way? Why am I so anxious? Because whenever I feel like that, I generally want to see if it's okay, am I making a mistake? Is that my conscience trying to tell me not to do something? And I spent hours going through that process and just realizing, and I kept coming back to, I'm worried about the social consequences. I live in a small community. It's going to piss a lot of people off, people at my church, people that my wife knows, but I kept going back to, but is this true? Did this really happen? Did this kid really suffer? And was his suffering ignored? Yeah. Yeah. Did the school district fail this kid? And all the other students? Yeah. Yeah, they did. And so then I hit send, and then I laid awake until 5:30 in the morning because I was absolutely stressed out of my mind. But, it was that thing of just man, that social pressure, it sucks. I get why people are silent. I didn't have anything to lose outside of the social stuff because I didn't work for them anymore. If I still worked for them, I probably wouldn't have done that. So, but anyway, so I sent that. Then it was there until we know at least 7:30 in the morning. So it was up for 10 or 11 hours. And then they managed to delete it. But I also, like I said, sent a copy to every school board member as well. Didn't hear back from anyone. I sent a copy to the local newspaper of the redacted version, not the one that had the teachers' names and some of this other stuff in it. Sent that to the local paper as well. Didn't hear from them either. Then Tuesday night, so last night, me and my school psychologist buddy, we went to a local there happened to be a Republicans meeting last night. So I'm like, dude, you want to go to this? Somehow we found out about it. I can't remember how we found out about it. And it was 35 minutes until it started. And we've been drinking gin and tonics. And I'm just still on the tail end of whatever that crap is that I've had. And I'm like, dude, do you want to go to this? He's like, let's do it. So I literally ran home and which made me, I had coughing fits for the rest of the night. And then changed in clothes and went to this Republicans thing, which that was a whole other learning experience. One of the kind of fascinating takeaways I had from it was there were people there that were concerned about issues, concerned about stuff that was going on, but it was just so clearly a room full of people that were disinterested in power. And it was just kind of that stereotype of we want to be left alone. We understand this, that, or the other important issue. One of the things I learned from that is that Democrats use redistricting to their advantage where they can. Redistricting is a bipartisan shit show because the Democrats control the city council here, and they're wanting to redistrict it in a way that they will have permanent control of all this stuff. And because the Republicans are this really matters, we're not going to have any other representation on the city council ever again if they get this done. And it's just funny because you always hear about the redistricting stuff with Republicans doing it, but these are Republicans going, this is bad. So it's a bipartisan thing. But it was just clearly a room full of people that were super intelligent, understood what was going on. But it was we need people to run for this position and this position, this position. It's none of them were interested in it. And it just goes back to that thing about how the right wants to be left alone, but oftentimes they don't realize that you have to have power in order to do that. It's just a fundamental asymmetry that will probably always exist. Whenever people that don't want power don't seek power, and then, but want to be left alone anyway. But I made some connections there. There was a lawyer there who I think me and my buddy are going to go to this conservative breakfast on Saturday morning. Man, this is wild stuff. I never thought I'd do something like this. Former Bernie bro. Anyway, but just to try and, their strength in numbers, I walked away encouraged. I spoke to the leader of the Republicans, here, and she was super interested in things that were going on. And I sent her a copy of that letter as well. And she's like, I know some people that are going to be interested in this. So that was really encouraging. But there was this lawyer there who is helping to file a lawsuit against the school district about this one girl over the mask policy. And we tried to catch him, but we didn't catch him before he left. So we're going to that conservative breakfast on Saturday to try and talk to him, to let him know about this stuff that's going on with the school district that we were part of. Anyway, so then I find out that there's a school board meeting tonight, and my buddy gets me the information on how to request to talk at the school board meeting. So I sent an email to one of the head of the board, just saying, hey, this is my request to speak at the meeting tonight. I'd like to talk about recent concerns and complaints that were brought to the board. If you have any other questions, please let me know. And she responds shortly after, basically saying here, it's limited to 3 minutes. Only 15 people can talk. Here's the Zoom link. Keep it no profanity and no personal attacks, and don't go over on your time. Those were the rules I was given. And then that was it. About an hour after, maybe a little over an hour after I get that email about talking in front of the board, I get an email from the superintendent about the mass email I sent out on Monday night. And that email said, I'll read it off my phone because it's pretty funny. Is very brief. He said, dear so-and-so, I'm writing in regards to your November 8th, 2021 email to the ACSD1 community. Your email explicitly reveals confidential student and personnel information protected by federal and state law. Please refrain from further dissemination. Thank you in advance for your assistance. That's nonsense. Nothing that I said in there was confidential. I didn't mention any student's name. The death of that student wasn't confidential anyway. It's public knowledge. They sent an email out about it. And also it's like, motherfucker, I don't work for you anymore. But he was basically threatening me, saying, hey, you're violating the law, which is nonsense. Nothing I said there was a violation of law or any confidentiality. Nothing in the email I sent was. But of course, this is in response to me talking in front of the school board tonight, right? He could have, that's like 2 sentences. He could have said that to me yesterday. That he was pissed off and embarrassed about the email I sent out, because it's like, what, I name drop him in the one that went out to the entire staff. Anyway, I sent him a pretty snarky response. Well, you know what? I'll read you my response to that email, just because why not? Let's spice this live stream up a little bit here. I say, good to hear from you. I'll take your conveniently timed letter as one. In agreement with my point in the previous letter that you, person A, and person B, in addition to person C, who I forgot to mention, all violated both your own district policy as well as state and federal law in ignoring my and other individuals' formal complaints in February and March of 2020. I commend you for finally coming to terms with your failures. See, in that email he sent me, you'll notice he said, hey, you're not supposed to talk about these things. He didn't deny the fact that I explicitly accused him of violating the law and district policy, which is hilarious. It's like, he didn't say, hey, don't talk about this. And also, I didn't do any of that shit. He was just like, hey, what, dude, anyway. So I said, yeah, I commend you for finally coming to terms with your failures. 2, take this letter as an ill-informed attempt to get me to stop talking about your legal and ethical shortcomings that conveniently came a few hours after I registered to speak at the school board meeting tonight. While understandable, your legally illiterate attempts at silencing me will be met with the same response myself and others received after filing your previously mentioned complaints with you. Nothing will come of it. So I said, yeah, I'm going to respond to this the same way you responded to our complaints. I'm going to ignore it. 3, this email, this is an admission that I struck a nerve. I have nothing more to add other than this is what happens when you violate all ethical responsibility to the thousands of students you are responsible for. I've been acting out of care for these students since all of this began. You've been acting out of your own self-interest and self-preservation. I'm not especially sorry that such a morally bankrupt strategy hasn't worked out for you. As my legal team affirmed the afternoon I sent that email, you and I both know I violated no laws, state or federal, in what it entailed, unless, of course, embarrassing you has somehow been outlawed in recent weeks without my knowledge, in which case I would have to plead guilty. I welcome your impotent attempts to prove the contrary. I'll be forwarding this and all future correspondence, should you decide to continue down this path, which I genuinely will also welcome, to my legal team, as well as the local press. Respectfully, just kidding, you're a terrible person for abandoning these students and wholly unworthy of respect. And then I signed it. So that's what I sent to him. Because fuck that guy for accusing me of that bullshit and trying to get me to shut up before talking in front, to the board. And fuck him for failing those students. You know, as I mentioned before, all of this was political. He stuck his neck out for a principal he shouldn't have. And then about a week later is just bad timing for him and also for me. Everything blew up. And so then the superintendent had to defend that principal, or else the superintendent probably would have been out of a job if all of the failings of that principal would have been brought to light, because the school board is trying to get rid of him. Anyway, so then I go to talk to the meeting. And I was, after I sent that, I was like, I don't know if they're going to let me. Oh, and I forwarded that to him and I CC'd the local newspaper on it as well. So can you tell I'm in a little bit spicy mode? Anyway, so I accept the Zoom link. They do some, first order of business stuff. Then they adjourn to a private session for an hour to talk about some possible litigation stuff. I don't know what they're talking about. They didn't give any details in the meeting agenda. So I'm just sitting there with my thumb up my ass, and then they come back, and then it's like time to hear from people. And I'm the only person, it turns out. So they let me in. They tell me I have 3 minutes, and I thank them. And by the way, to their credit, that they let me talk. And so I start talking. I say who I am. I say that I worked at the middle school. And I say after we had a tragic loss of a student, which I didn't give any names. I just said after the tragic loss of a student a little over a week ago, this one board member starts interrupting me, or they talk to they say, Mrs. Chairman, I'd like you to please remind it's like, how the fuck do these things work? Anyway, they talk over me to get that person to remind me that, and she talks for like 30 seconds over me while my time is ticking down. I got 3 minutes. And after she talks for about 30 seconds, I go, I'm going to get my time back, right? Like the clock's still ticking. And they were like, well, we have sensitive confidential information about the students. Even if you don't mention names, we can't reference any of that stuff around students. And I'm like, okay, am I going to get my time back? Because I've just lost a third of my time. I'd like to get my time back. And then and no one says anything, and the clock keeps going. I go, okay, I guess not. And so then I said, after a tragedy, which I'm sure we all know what I'm talking about, I felt compelled to try and draw attention to the fact that the district failed to investigate complaints about the environment at the middle school from the 2019 to 2020 school year. I said there was this horrible environment. We pleaded both formally and informally with our administrators. And then I gave the name of the principal who ignored it. And then they interrupt me again. And I guess I give the name of the principal and the superintendent and the HR director and the special ed director, because these are all people that were included in the complaints that they didn't investigate. And I get all these people talking, and they're like, oh, can we remind the speaker not to address? And so then they mute me and they say, they literally said, we've told you multiple times to speak in generalities and not give names of individuals. So keep in mind, before, all they said was that I can't reference individual students because of the sensitivity around an event. So now it's, I can't reference individual staff members. And by the way, in the guidelines I was given for talking in the email were no profanity and no personal attacks, and don't go over on your time. That was it. Those are the three things. So that they now tell me if I break the rules again, they're going to cut me off, and that I have to only speak. We've told you can only speak in generalities. You have to address us. And this is like the look of incredulity on these people's faces whenever I'm saying, here are the people who failed to it. Like, these are people who are getting mad at me for saying so-and-so didn't do their job, violated the law. And they're like, how dare you bring up this person's name? Anyway, so they give me a minute and I go, okay, the administration failed to investigate complaints that were numerous detailed complaints, both formal and informal, about violations of district policy and law that were filed by myself and multiple other employees of the school district during the 2019 to 2020 school year. They failed to investigate it. They chose not to investigate it. And then what was the last thing I said? Oh, and I said, oh, and a certain individual, unnamed, who may or may not be the superintendent, emailed me earlier tonight, leveling false accusations against me and basically telling me to shut up and not talk about it. So that should tell you everything you need to know about the seriousness of this situation, that they didn't deny what I said, but they just didn't want me to talk to you about it. And I said, I'm just begging for you, pleading with you to take this seriously. Don't do what these other unnamed people did and fail to investigate it. I'm begging you to investigate this. And I said, that's it. Thank you for your time. Because then the clock hit 1, or hit 0. And so I was, and then there were 2 board members who were kind enough, and they said, I'd like to motion that he get a minute of his time back. And it was approved, and they gave me a minute back. And so I thanked them for that. And I said, look, I don't know what the process is to try and draw attention to this. I'm not supposed to name names. Okay, I won't name names. So I used the time. I said, here's all I'll say. I've got the complaints. I've got the dates. I've got the names. I have the receipts to show the detailed complaints that were not followed up on, that were not investigated by the administrators at that time. I said, you can look into this yourselves. I have these things. I can prove my side of this. They want me to shut up. They want to accuse me of nonsense because they don't have anything. They are caught. I need you to investigate this. I said, this isn't about me. This isn't about my experience. It's about these kids and not letting another tragedy like this happen, and doing our job and our duty to these students. That's it. I said, so I'm begging you, I'm pleading with you to take this seriously. Please don't fail to investigate the situation like they did. Thank you for your time. And that was it. As an aside, there was a board member who, whenever it first started, I almost changed my name. It turned out I was the only person there speaking. There was a board member there who, they have like a hyphenated last name. Like, you could say it's like Smith Johnson. It's not the last name, but anyway. And whenever she came into the meeting, this is a person who I'd watched a previous board meeting, and she was wearing a mask by herself during a board meeting a couple months ago in her house. These fucking people are crazy. Anyway, but she had trustee, like one of her hyphenated names, and then in parentheses, she, her. She had to put her pronouns in her Zoom bio, and it's like, every fucking person here knows what your pronouns are. Like, are you serious? Anyway, and then they go into that private session, and then she comes back, and she's changed her name just to her regular name, and then the other a hyphenated first number last name. So if it was Trustee Smith, she, her, it came back and it was, Jane Johnson, Anyway, I thought that was funny because it's all virtue signaling nonsense. So that's what happened. I don't know what's gonna happen in terms of the complaints or that thing that I sent back to the superintendent, because I guess he forgot that I don't work for him anymore. And so that idiot can't tell me what to do because I didn't violate any laws. But it was pretty obviously, it was a hostile. And I said that, I said, it's pretty obvious I'm facing a hostile environment here because I'm just trying to talk to you about this. And these weren't in the rules that I was given. And of course, it's pretty telling that all of that was at the very end. And then I went back and I made sure to record that on a separate Zoom thing that I made. I rewound the YouTube live stream and recorded it so that I have a copy. Anyway, and then they were voting on, literally the last order of business was voting on mask mandates for the kids, continuing those. And of course, it's at the end when no one's watching and no one cares anymore. But I thought that was pretty fascinating. So that's the saga so far. And I want to use that to kind of piggyback into, I think I'm going to make a separate video about this other thing, actually. I want to talk about institutional capture and how that process works. But what I'll say is one of the realizations, I'll walk you through kind of some of the mental, while I was in this process, when I was still working for the district, I kept thinking, okay, after this next complaint is filed or after this next interview, with someone supposedly investigating this, then this will be better. They'll figure it out. I was operating based on the assumption that this institution was functioning based on my previous paradigms for how it functioned or what it, was supposed to be doing. And I was, every single time I kept getting the same. So I was expecting it to have to respond to information about how kids were being harmed to, oh shit, kids are being harmed. We need to do something about that. But every time instead it responded antagonistically to me and to the other people filing complaints for years. And my butt, as I detailed in a previous conversation with Deb, when I told my friend's story, who'd been doing this since 2012 with this district before. I mean, I came on the scene in 2017 or 2018, actually. He was doing it by himself for 6 years. He kept getting met with the same hostile response. And then I'm getting the same hostile response. And it was really confusing to me because you just kept thinking, when's it going to click? Kids are being harmed. This is a no-brainer. Kids are being harmed. But I kept getting defense. Like I was a pathogen. And they retaliated against me. They retaliated against my friend. And then fortunately he has been there long enough that it's harder to get rid of him. So he's still there, but then they sent me somewhere where there's nothing for me to do for a year. And then they didn't renew my contract. What I learned, and this is something I briefly touched on in the live stream with Deb, and I'll go into it in greater detail in a future video, but I'll just kind of allude to it here. Maybe I'll make that video tomorrow because I've got way too many outlines and drafts, just sitting, waiting for me to record. My studio is ready again. They finished redoing the bathroom. Anyway, so I actually can record stuff now. Anyway, but one of the things I learned is the mistake in not looking at what a thing is producing and rather judging it by what you think it's supposed to be producing. So in other words, when it comes to an institution, if you want to understand what that institution is optimized for, and if you find yourself continually man, every single time I think they can't surprise me, they find a way to surprise me. If you find that happening, ask yourself, what is this thing actually producing, and what is my expectation of it? Like, in other words, if you know a person, I don't know if this is just off the top of my head, so this might be a bad example, but let's say you know a person, and or you've heard about a person, for whatever reason, you have a reasonable expectation that they're like a smart person or a competent person or a kind person, something like that. And for whatever reason, you start having encounters with them where 100% of the time, they are the exact opposite of what your previous understanding of who they were. They're acting the exact opposite. So you're maybe, you keep hearing about this friend, or this one guy is really good at his job, and then all of a sudden, like, is just shit. And not like sometimes shit, every single day, nothing but horrible work, or every single day, like nothing but wrong answers. You start to go, okay, either one thing, either my expectations are correct of this person, and this is just a huge coincidence, or I need to recalibrate my expectations of this person. Whatever I thought they were, whoever I thought they were, whatever I thought they could do has clearly changed. And you recalibrate those expectations. You don't go, no, these expectations are correct, and I will continue to expect them tomorrow, regardless of how many days in a row I encounter something contrary to these expectations, right? You recalibrate. The same goes for institutions. If the sensible thing that I should have done pretty early in that process actually was to go, okay, I keep getting the same response out of this institution every single time. I need to change my expectations of this institution, and change my expectations of what the proper process is for addressing these issues. Because my assumptions were based on that it was functioning according to this other paradigm. I thought the union that is supposed to protect teachers, especially ones that lose their jobs, would protect an educator who lost their job, me. That didn't happen. I thought that the administration, the superintendent, the special ed director, the principal, all these people who you would think these are educators, they got an education because they care about kids, so that's going to be their highest priority, right? Wrong. If protecting the kid comes into conflict with their professional reputation, which it did, they're going to pick their reputation. So I will go into it in this video, and then maybe I'll just like clip it and make a separate video out of it. Who knows? So my point is that and I made a thread about this on Twitter, and I talked about it in the podcast with Deb, but I want to explain it again here for people that missed it. Is that we have to stop conceptualizing institutions as broken, like the ones that we look at and say they're broken. Why? Because a broken thing produces shoddy results. It's not functioning. It doesn't work. But these institutions aren't broken because they are producing a thing. They're producing a thing with a high degree of consistency, and they're producing a thing that when you look at it is actually working really well. It's just not working well. Like, in other words, these things are broken based on our understanding of what they're supposed to be doing, not by their own internal understanding of what they're supposed to be doing. Okay. Those are two different things. This goes back to the expectations thing. And by the way, I'm not saying that our expectations of these things are inaccurate. I think they are accurate and based on previously existing expectations and situations that made sense a while ago. Anyway, so, and here's why this matters. And I was talking to someone about this, and they said, well, I don't like to use the term broken. I like the term failing. And I said, I don't even think failing is the right term. I said, do you think that CNN and NPR look at the outcome of the 2020 election and consider themselves a failure? Do you think that they look at the conversation about vaccine mandates or the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, or anything like that, like the Steele dossier, do you think they consider themselves failures? It seems like everything they're doing on purpose. A failure is an accident. I don't see what these institutions are doing as accidents. It seems like there is a lot of intentionality behind what they're doing, and it's consistent. And that if you look at it as not what my expectation of it is, but what is it actually doing and how well is it doing that thing, then you would say that these things are actually doing that thing really well. So like news, you would say they're providing legitimation and propaganda and misinformation, disinformation to support a certain power structure, to support themselves, to support their ideological team or whatever. And they are, kind of brainwashing a certain portion of the population to just go along with whatever it is that they say, no matter how completely batshit it is. If you ask yourselves how they're doing at that, I'd say they're doing pretty well at that. I saw a Pew Research poll yesterday. 62% of progressives say that success in life is not up to the individual, that it's largely out of the control of the individual. 62%, almost 2/3 of progressives say that success, like your success, is largely not up to you, which means that failure is also largely not up to you. And so that daddy big brother, the government, has to be the one that is the umpire in that situation and make sure that people don't fail or that people succeed according to whatever the progressives. Anyway, that to me seems like a success. The misinformation around like COVID hospitalizations, like if you look at, the Dunning-Kruger thing about how Bill Maher talked about this on a recent episode of his, I forgot what the name of Real Talk or whatever, Bill Maher, where he talked about how the majority of Democrats think that the average hospitalization for like COVID for unvaccinated people is like 50-60% or something like that. And that the average hospitalization for unvaccinated people with COVID is like 40%, when in both cases it's below 1%. Like that's a success of the media, is my point. That's not a failure. It's not an accident, right? This thing isn't broken. And here's the example that I give and that I gave on Deb's channel. And I will keep giving this, by the way. This is something I'm going to keep harping on because I want as many people as possible to adopt this paradigm because I think it's true. So this is my propaganda, I guess, as a shitty community college teacher. I can't believe that. It's really funny. So you got to be able to laugh at yourself. So and this is why, and I'll explain why I think the calling these things broken paradigm is a mistake. It's a huge mistake, like a huge, like categorical mistake and strategic mistake. So I said, during World War II, we adopted a wartime economy, the Defense Production Act. The government was able to alter the production of certain manufacturing companies to stop producing what they were doing and make things for the war effort. We saw that companies do this voluntarily during COVID, like MyPillow starts making masks, for example. But during World War II, you had companies like Singer, that was previously a sewing machine still was a sewing machine company, but some of their production was converted to making munitions. And one of the things they made was a Colt Model 1911, which is a 45 caliber pistol. And you can actually find to this day Singer Colt 45s. They're really cool. You can find them online. If they're in good shape, they actually are worth a good amount of money. So here's the hypothetical. So you're an employer at a Singer factory and you walk in one day to work and no one's told you that they've switched production over to these Colts. And you walk in and no one briefs you on that. You just come in and you show up at your post and you're looking at the conveyor belts and you're like, wait a second, what is this? It's not making sewing machines. All that's coming off this thing is pistols. And you watch it for hours and it's nothing but these pistols for hours and hours and hours. It's mesmerizing. It's not poorly constructed sewing machines. It's not random hunks of metal. It's the same product with a high degree of consistency and apparently fidelity, right? Like it looks like it's put together well and that it functions well. And there's very little deviation in the results coming off the conveyor belt. Would you draw the conclusion that the factory machines were broken? No, of course not. You would naturally ascertain that they had been optimized for a different task. In fact, if you'd never worked there and you didn't know what Singer made and you just showed up to that factory one day, you would assume it was a Colt 45 factory, because why wouldn't you? You would just judge it by what's coming off the conveyor belt. You judge it, the tree, by its fruits. Whenever we call these things broken, are these institutions broken, it makes it seem like it's an accident, like it's incompetent, like it's dilapidated or whatever. And it does not take into account what they have been re-optimized for, right? So that person I was talking to, who I said, I don't think failed's the right term, they said, you're right, they've been hijacked. I said, exactly. And the reason it matters is because the way you conceptualize a broken institution, or a broken, let's go building, a broken building versus a hijacked building is very different, right? A broken building, it sounds like it's a product of incompetence, failure. You know, you go to fix it. Right? Something that's hijacked, a building that's broken, is different than a building that is hijacked and is full of heavily armed and hostile militiamen that are very antagonistic towards your presence there, right? You conceptualize those problems very differently. As long as we look at them as broken, and this brings me to, I watched Jordan Peterson's interview with Dave Rubin today, and it was a good interview. As of course, I mean, Dave is a good interviewer, so of course it's going to happen. Much to his haters' chagrin. I don't get the hate that he gets anyway. That's a whole other thing. So Jordan starts talking about, and I've heard Jordan talk about institutions before, and the people who want to blow up institutions. And Jordan makes the point, he's like, it's not about blowing up and destroying and replacing the institution. It's not about that. You have to look at exactly what's wrong, precisely what's wrong, so you can fix it. It's not about trying to replace it. Obviously, I'm not doing a Jordan Peterson voice there, but that's what he was saying. And I realized, I'm like, Jordan still looks at these things as broken. And he wants to fix them, but they're not fixable. The problem with Jordan's perspective and how it makes it difficult, if not impossible, to conceptualize what the actual solution is, or trade-off, is I think that Jordan makes the mistake of confusing two different kinds of replacing the institution. He's used to people on the left who want to destroy a thing, including the foundation, right? The people on the crazy, like the collectivist, socialist, whatever, Marxist ideology types, or as per the Stephen Hicks interview, the Rousseauian types is more common. They want to throw the whole thing out. They want to get rid of the Constitution. They want to completely remake the institution from the ground up, including the foundation. They want to get rid of the old principles and axioms and like guiding ethos that made that thing what it was. So if you say the foundation are those principles and all the things I just mentioned it's built on, and the building is supposed to be, or at least begins as an expression of those things, the people that Jordan usually talks about are people that want to destroy both of those things. They want to uproot the whole thing. I want to uproot that tree. I want to know where the gold's at. There's an old meme reference for you. They want to destroy the whole thing. So I get what he's talking about there. But there's another form of institutional replacement that does not involve getting rid of the foundation. That looks at something and says, okay, look, whatever it is that's sitting on that foundation is no longer a reflection of what it was built on. That might have been built on things like liberty, or let's take our education, built on actually educating kids or trying to help prepare them, or, built on their best interest or whatever. It might have been built on that. But whatever the hell that is that's currently sitting on that foundation, that does not reflect what it was built on. So the form of institutional replacement that people like myself are now talking about, someone like James Lindsay, for example, I mean, we see this with that University of Austin thing that Barry Weiss and people like John Haidt, Heather Hine, like lots of good people are involved in that. It's amazing the hate that they got online from, I mean, good Lord, I had no idea there are so many haters. Anyway, people are stupid. It's like, let them try. Anyway. But we understand you can replace an institution without replacing the foundation. If you see a thing as broken, you go and try to fix it, but it's not a broken thing. It's a hijacked thing. It'd be like going in there and somehow not noticing that every time you hammer a nail in, someone goes and pulls it out or changes your tool, or, hides your tools, or, or they say, you're like, hey, I need to go fix the elevator. And they're like, yeah, you can't go over there, man. Sorry. And once you realize that these things are hijacked by hostile entities, you go, okay, maybe the answer is to go and build something else on the foundation that this thing was originally established on the same principles. That's one of the reasons why I have hope in the country still, because the Constitution is still largely intact. As long as the Constitution is still largely intact, the foundation is still largely intact. So, and this is one of the things I wish Jordan would realize. But this is why we need to stop saying they're broken. You have to start saying they're hijacked, or they've been, they're unsalvageable. They have been toxically poisoned. The cancer is it has metastasized, and it's terminal, right? You could say they are terminal, or whatever. But you can't conceptualize a lot of these things as fixable. It's just a waste of time. It's not going to be fruitful. So what you do, instead of trying to hijack, you go and you build a base of your own, and you let that thing collapse on itself, because there are people who are still expecting it to produce what it produced before. It might now be optimized for self-preservation. Back to my experience with the school board tonight and previously, and what I said before, you'll know it by its fruit. So look at what they are doing and use that as your heuristic. And this is one of the things I said on Deb's channel, is as best as you can, if you want to understand what these institutions are optimized for and how unsavable they are, forget what you think they're supposed to be doing and look at what they are doing with deadly consistency, right? Look at CNN. No one would look at CNN who didn't know what they were supposed to be doing and who actually understood facts and say, oh, this is a news organization. They might say, oh, this is like an opinion organization, or this is an organization like that's dedicated to a political party or something, but they wouldn't say it's a news organization. And so do that, like go through that like process, use those heuristics, and try to forget what you know about certain institutions of what you think they're supposed to be doing, and start looking at what's actually coming off the conveyor belt. It doesn't matter if it says Singer on the building when you walk in. What matters is what's coming off the conveyor belt. And it's not sewing machines anymore. It's something else. So look at what they've been optimized for. In the case, again, of the education system, it's been optimized for self-preservation and self-legitimation. So that might raise the question, well, why did I speak in front of the school board tonight, right? What am I trying to get them to do? I pleaded with them to do something, right? Do I think they will? No, I don't. I don't think they will. I don't. But I want to draw parents' attention to that situation they don't know about. Parents didn't know about that, about what was taking place. If I can even get a few more eyeballs, because I want those parents to have the realization of how unsalvageable it is. It's about red pilling them, or red peeling them. So that's why I did that. And, if they decide, if the school board does something, that's great. It's no skin off my teeth either way. It was kind of fun to, go talk in front of them, and for me, it wasn't about trying to have some viral moment of, telling them how it is. I mean, again, I didn't even say anything hostile, and they were shouting over me. So it's like, I'm glad I didn't even take that approach. But it's about, and I'll start to wrap it up here. For me, my personal philosophy has always been, in anything in life, I want to say that I gave it everything I could, that I knew, it's not to say there won't be things that I'll look back on and go, man, I wish I would have thought to do this or that. But it's everything that my mind manifests at the time of like, what does it look like to say, I beat this dead horse? I did every possible thing that I could. I left no stone unturned. And I just run through that mental checklist with anything that matters. That's it. I do that with relationships. I do that with things like this, with anything that I try at, like anything that matters to me that I'm putting work into. I go 100%, so that I don't want to have the regret of the what ifs. There's this great quote from the last episode of this season 2 of Dave, which is a really great show if you haven't watched it, where he says, I can live with failure. I can't live with what ifs. And so that's kind of just how I approach things. So that's why I spoke in front of the school board. It's not because I think that the school district is salvageable. It's not. The education system isn't salvageable. It's not. It's proven that. It's proven that it's not interested in these kids. Anyway, so that's the micro lesson on institutional capture. Look at what's coming off the conveyor belt. Start to recalibrate and reset your expectations. Thought I just heard something. Anyway, do that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. If you shared that letter, I appreciate it. I will put a link to the redacted letter. So for anyone who hasn't read it, and I'll put a link to that conversation I had with Deb. And I'm probably going to make a clip out of this thing about how to think about institutions. Cause dude, I'm telling you, I had that realization while driving from Wyoming to Missouri. That hit me at like 3:30 in the morning. And I'm like, I had the thought of, what if none of this is an accident? And then I was like, wait a second, none of this is an accident. Like the way NPR covers things isn't an accident. Like, so I'm like, okay, wait, if it's not an accident, that means it's on purpose. It's on purpose. It's not broken. If it's on purpose, they're not failing, because they're not self-correcting, right? Like they're not going, oh, we got that story wrong. We really want to make sure we get it right this time, right? No, that's not the case. They're consistently wrong in the same direction, which means it's on purpose. So it's about what they become optimized for. So all these things become optimized for supporting, the cathedral, whatever you want to call it. So the answer is new institutions. And the last thing I'll say is the other realization I had, and this is kind of white-pilled me on elections, and a renewed understanding of the importance of local elections, is that free and independent institutions require free and independent soil to be planted in, right? You see what I'm saying? Like if someone said, I want to go start a business we're not going to do any vaccine mandates or anything like this. I want to start an independent, whatever thing. I'm going to do it in Portland. You'd go, what is wrong with you? That's an idiotic idea. That's not going to work. Why? Because that's like planting a seed in like toxic radioactive soil. Like it's dead. It's dead. So we need locations. We need free locations to plant this soil. We have to have this nice, rich, this nutrient rich with liberty, and a proper perspective of personal freedom, which I guess is liberty. I repeat myself. Like I said, I just teach at community college. So we need to have those places in order to have these new institutions. So it's white-pilled me on like elections and like, oh, okay, actually we need to fight for this stuff, and for people to move away from those metropolitan areas that are compromised, like get out of there. And we need to concentrate like the people who understand how this shit works in these places. And so we can build these institutions so that we have them set up, especially the credentialing institutions, for the things that really matter, like, I don't know, neurosurgery. We need competent neurosurgeons, and that's not going to happen out of woke medicine. Spoiler alert. So we need those so that whenever these other institutions collapse on themselves, we have the replacements ready to go, and that those replacements will have been ready to go for a while. So we'll have the A/B test going. Anyway, all right. Thank you for your support. I'll include all of that stuff I mentioned, whatever, yada, yada, in the description. If you have any questions, comments, leave them. Always welcome your feedback. Appreciate your patience. Appreciate your support. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at My Mundane Mind. The best place is my locals community. My locals community is amazing, by the way. They're the absolute best. I love locals. It's definitely the future of the internet. If you're not on there, I don't know what to tell you. But that's returntoreason.locals.com. And you know what? I think I'm going to call